We are here to debunk Western propaganda, regardless of the situation or circumstances we may find ourselves in. And now let's talk about that big lie from the past few days, which actually comes to change the Russian narrative, even making it completely unrecognizable. To, of course, try to convey to the Western population, especially the European population, the need to keep paying their taxes. When it comes to maintaining, I would even say, the walking corpse of Ukraine, because it's a country that in reality shouldn't exist. Careful, not in geographical terms, but because it can no longer sustain itself. However, Donald Trump keeps kicking the can down the road. And today we're moving on to the next one, which is called Vladimir Putin doesn't meet with Volodymyr Zelensky simply because he doesn't like him. And I'm not the one saying it, it's Donald Trump himself. Roll the video. Why?
But do you think President Putin is so reluctant to meet with President Zelensky?
Because he doesn't like him?
Yes, indeed. Donald Trump has been extremely brief, but that doesn't mean his lie is suddenly going to become even the slightest bit pious. In fact, it's quite the opposite, because this contributes, contrary to what some Western media might see in it, to distorting the Kremlin's narrative, as they call it, and to show a stance of the Russian Federation that simply does not exist. And within which, in fact, that attack with nuclear weapons is actually possible. Even which has been so deeply reflected within the European Union, and from the European Union, they argue the war should continue by sending Ukraine more weapons, as Ukraine cannot lose to Russia, since Russia refuses to negotiate if it wins. And then it will go, well, almost directly back to the gates of Berlin, which seems to be exactly what will have to be done to put an end to this conflict. Because I don't know about you, but I don't see any way out unless the West, once and for all, stops giving weapons to Ukraine, which, without those weapons, the war would end. It's been years, we're not even talking about months anymore. First of all, the real reason, of course, goes much deeper. It relates to something, and I won't make this story too long. However, we will also analyze the implications of this later. It has to do with the fact that Russia does not recognize the legitimacy of Ukraine. Don't you like those phrases from Putin? Zelensky doesn't meet with him because of this. And the one about Russia not recognizing the legitimacy of the Ukrainian president, whose term in fact expired in May 2023, if I'm not mistaken, is quite different. That is, in one, it seems that Russia is driven by purely emotional reasons, and that it can't find even a minimum of logic or rationality anywhere. It turns her into an actor, especially in the eyes of the Western viewer, who could end up doing anything. And who indeed might basically want to keep all of Ukrainian territory and then continue advancing into European territory. Simply because Putin woke up like that one morning and something snapped in his mind. However, as soon as we really look at the Russian position, what a surprise. They seldom appear in Western media. And that's why I have to appear here myself, regardless of the circumstances around me, because now I'm on my way home. I already explained to you that just recently I spent 16 hours with my little son and my husband at Kazan airport, and after that we had a very long car journey. Before that, can you see this, Bruce? My son threw, well, some kind of huge speaker, and it hit me right on the head. Thank God it didn't hit him because he was very close. Anyway, even with all the exhaustion I'm carrying, I have to stand here and try at least to contribute my tiny little grain of sand so that the truth can reach as many people as possible. And for people to really understand what are the reasons that truly motivate the different international actors, especially those whose version simply isn't shown in Western media, or if it is, it's shown in a very distorted way. And this is where we get to the heart of the matter. The Russian Federation has many reasons that, I repeat, are not shown in Western media. just in case someone ends up being convinced not to meet. Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky. One of the most obvious reasons is that they are simply not on the same level. And not just because Zelensky is nothing more than an actor turned president, but on the international stage, no matter how much hype he has received, he doesn't. I don't know what you all think, but I believe he doesn't represent any real importance. But on top of that, there's a much more important reason. Well, actually, two. The first and most important is that his legal mandate expired. And it's Ukrainian law itself that states that if new elections are not held, there are certain things that the acting president cannot do. And among them is signing treaties, such as, for example, a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. That is to say, if tomorrow Vladimir Putin actually meets with Vladimir Zelensky, it could be that they want to sign some kind of document. But the second one has no validity whatsoever when it comes to guaranteeing anything to Russia, not even when signing the paper. That is, this could be absolutely good, I can't tell you. Eliminated at the very moment it could disappear. Or rather, at the very moment he leaves his position and someone else is chosen for the role of Ukrainian president. And then the conflict could start once again. Which of course goes against the position of the Russian Federation to end this conflict definitively and, let's say, nip it in the bud. To this, we should add a second reason, almost more important than the first. It's that Russia perfectly understands the basis of what's happening now within the Ukrainian conflict. And that Ukraine is not an independent actor on its own, but rather acts under Western orders and above all under the orders of the United States. So what the heck for? Is he going to talk to the servant when he should meet directly with the master, decide whatever is necessary with the master, and then, once the master sends him to the servant? Exactly, that's how it ends up happening in reality, and that saves a lot of unnecessary meetings above all. And here are a couple of additional reasons why Zelensky is seeking this meeting so eagerly. It would undoubtedly strengthen his international image. Vladimir Putin himself, who, by the way, I remember was recently received in Alaska with a red carpet, well, Putin himself is meeting with him, who has recently been with Trump. So this actually gives him a very strong position, even if it's just in media terms. Secondly, the Russian Federation. Obviously, it understands that Ukraine is not even remotely willing to concede anything that Russia considers necessary to resolve this conflict. Territorial concession? None. Ukraine will not recognize any territories currently controlled by the Russian Federation. Not even Crimea, which has been under the control of the Russian Federation since 2014, which is absolutely absurd. Much less is there any talk of Ukraine not wanting to join or giving up its constant request to become part of NATO. That is, Ukraine wants to keep absolutely everything exactly the same as it was before the Russian Federation entered that state. Of the special military operation before it began, which now, when Russia controls more or less between 20 and 30% of Ukraine, is, I think everyone should understand, absolutely impossible. What are the real reasons that drive Donald Trump to say and repeatedly repeat this lie? That, because it's not the first time he said it, that Vladimir Putin doesn't meet with Zelensky simply for personal reasons, like he just doesn't like Zelensky. Well, I don't know. I would love to read your versions of what Donald Trump might be trying to achieve with this. As my own theory, I think that he's trying to reinforce his image as a great negotiator. Because if an agreement is reached between Russia and Ukraine, then he will indeed say that I have done practically the impossible. Also, how to acquire some extra rationality because, well, between Ukraine, which doesn't know what it's doing, and Putin, who seems to act based on reasons that are only emotional, well, here I am still maintaining my perfect reasoning, and I'm going to try to get both sides to reach an agreement. There could also be a third option, where he reinforces his image as a mediator between the two. He acts like nothing can be solved here without him, giving himself extra importance. And maybe he even has to solve it directly himself. Meet with Putin, since he doesn't like Zelensky, and that's why he won't meet with him. Leave more versions in the comments, because surely I haven't thought of all of them. Anyway, as an open question, considering how little validity there is when it comes to checking the truth of what's been said, that can be given to words. Many, and not just these words from Donald Trump, mind you. So I'm asking you if what he recently said about the United States no longer paying anything to Ukraine. They
are wealthy countries, but they didn't pay.
Yes, that's right. You also heard it in English, it's true.